Out of all the games that you could probably label as survival horror, my favorite would probably be the original Parasite Eve on the Sony PlayStation. I reviewed that game a long, long time ago, and while that old review hasn't aged well, it does still hold my basic opinion of the game, and that it's frickin' awesome. It's dark, it's deep, it's artistic, it's disturbing, it's everything you'd expect out of a survival horror game and more. It's incredibly interesting, the plot is unique, and it's based off of a novel, or rather a sequel to a novel, that is also incredibly good, and if you're a fan of sci-fi horror, I strongly recommend giving it a read. But, of course, with all things good, they had to ruin it with a sequel. I know it's really bad of me to say this, but I just hate Parasite Eve 2. It is, well, how do I put this?
Well, first of all, this isn't the Parasite Eve game. At all.
It just defies being all things Parasite Eve and decided to be something very unique, only not better. That's kind of its problem. I guess, in essence, it's not necessarily a truly bad game. There's nothing technically wrong with it, I suppose. But as a sequel, it completely fails on almost every conceivable level. I guess it's not all bad. I will say the graphical presentation, particularly with the cinematics, are fantastic. These are some of the best visuals you'd get on the original PlayStation. They're almost at PS2 level quality, and that's something to be expected from Squaresoft, especially at the time. They've always been pretty good about making their games look good. But of course, with any game, just because it looks good doesn't mean that it is good. And that's the problem here with Parasite Eve 2. The plot and the gameplay completely, utterly trash any shred of a chance you might have at enjoying this game if you are a huge fan of the original Parasite Eve, and let me tell you why. This game decided it was a really good idea to rip off, and I will use that term, rip off, probably one of the most popular survival horror games at that current time.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
Oh yeah, I'm going there. This game, both in plot and in story, completely ripped off Resident Evil in almost every conceivable way. I never got that. Why would you want to rip off Resident Evil? I get when it comes to some of the stuff that original Resident Evil did, but ripping off the gameplay, that's something you want to do. The original Resident Evil was played because it was a unique experience at the time. You had limited saves. It was a true survival horror experience. Here, that's not really what they did. Let me talk about the story first. Let me, and I'll stop when things become weird. Actually, you know what? Let me just give you the story in a brief summary.
A shadow government named Neo-Ark is using the mitochondria to create their own artificial neo-mitochondrian creatures. Oh no!
Yeah, that's the plot. You could frickin' replace Shadow Government with Umbrella, Aya with Jill Valentine, and frickin' NMCs with BOWs, and you'd have Resident Evil. It's the same fucking plot, which was already cliche to begin with, but then they had to make it even more cliche by just putting it into Parasite Eve, and that really pisses me off, because Parasite Eve had a really good and really interesting plot to work with, and they completely screwed it up with this. And even getting past that, even if you could look past the fact that the plot was just sort of ripped from Resident Evil and isn't that original, if you could get past that, it still doesn't make any goddamn sense to begin with. Okay, riddle me this. Why? Oh, why is this Shadow Government, which I'm pretty sure is called Neo-Ark, making more neo-mitochondrian creatures? The game, I believe, explains that they're trying to create superior life forms. Okay, for what purpose? Why would you want to make life forms that are better than yourself? That just sounds like you're asking for trouble. 2. To what end? What makes these life forms better, and why would you want them to be better? And I'm still trying to figure out how giant chickens are supposed to be better than human beings. Mind you, the vast majority of the creatures you fight in terms of the artificial neo-mitochondria creatures, or ANMCs, are mutated from human beings, which is something the original Eve did not do. She always burned or turned humans into jelly. She never mutated them. Here, they were mutating human beings, and I'm trying to figure out how any of these mutations make them better. They can't even think for themselves, as far as I can tell. They act like, I mean, these are llamas. Like, we already have these. I don't get it. And then we have this thing, which...
What was that? No, seriously. Was that a frickin' horse? That's supposed to scare me, is it? Okay, I can do that too.
You know, I think the chicken sound effect works a lot better because, really, giant chickens, how is this better? How is this superior? Why would you make this? This isn't frightening. And another thing that bothers me about these things is that as mitochondrial mutations are concerned, they don't make much sense. See, in the original Parasite Eve, whenever mitochondrial Eve, mutated any creature, which she did often, it would mutate into a form that was useful to her, usually something monstrous. Let's just take the first rat you encounter. The rat creature is mutated from a normal rat, which was non-threatening. She mutated it, it's something with, well, it was quadruple the size, for one. It had huge teeth, and it had a spiked tail that could shoot fire, which I don't really understand. But it was a threat. Here, how is turning a human into this a threat? How is this a superior threat, I ask of you? I don't get this. These mutations make no sense at all. They defy explanation. Oh, and the original neo-mitochondrial creatures, the ones that, you know, might be recognized by big fans of the original game, oh, they're in the game. Except, well, here are the rats. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you know, those only are about 1/4 the size they're supposed to be and serve absolutely no purpose other than to mildly irritate you. Oh, yeah. They turned some of the most threatening enemies from the first game into minor pest enemies. They die in a single shot. I mean, the rats were the first enemies you encounter, and they weren't that strong, but at least they looked like they could hurt you. I can't believe that they decided to... Why? Why would you reduce the size of it? What, to make the new creatures look better? You failed in that department. They don't look any better. They don't look any more intimidating. They look fucking stupid. And I shouldn't bitch about the chicken walkers too much, because there are more enemies late in the game, like fat people, and this guy with a flamethrower in his mouth, and the llamas I already mentioned. Oh yeah, these are all so superior to the current life forms on this planet. Oh yeah, totally. And I haven't even gotten to the main enemy of the game, the number 9 golem. The golems are another type of NMC that were designed for combat. And in fairness, they can do that, but I'm still trying to figure out what makes them so much better than regular soldiers. Anyway, but number 9 is actually self-aware to a certain degree, and he's also completely mad. What makes this driveling maniac a more captivating villain than the original mitochondrial Eve? Eve was interesting, mysterious, captivating in some way, disturbing at the same time. There are so many things right with how they made her character. And granted, she was based off of the one from the novel. Again, sequel, same Eve, technically. But still, the fact that they had this original interesting villain to work with, and, you know, the replacement for her is this guy. Oh yeah, you're totally intimidating, buddy. I'm not afraid of him. I can't even believe that he's in this game. He's a completely driveling maniac that you couldn't take seriously at a comedy show, let alone in a survival horror game. The supporting cast isn't even nearly as compelling. What about guys like Daniel? That dude was awesome! And now we have, oh yeah, these other people that kind of do stuff but really don't. I don't like any of these characters. None of them are interesting, captivating, or really show any and all creativity. Like, why are they here? You could easily remove them from the game and just have Aya go solo, and you'd have the same basic game to begin with, so what's the point, I ask you? And I haven't even gotten to the gameplay. Oh my god. Wow. Just wow. I just want you to know that these controls are the exact same as in the original Resident Evil. Oh yeah. They ripped off Resident Evil's control scheme too. You know, not just content to base this story off the plot. They also ripped off the controls, which I will never understand, because if there was anything that was truly, honest-to-God bad about the original Resident Evil, even at the time, it was those terrible, horrendous, abysmal controls. Say what you want about the current games, and say what you want about what it did for the survival horror genre, those controls always sucked, and they suck here too. Why would you ever do this? You had perfectly reasonable, effective controls in the first Parasite Eve game. They worked really well. You could move in any direction with the analog stick. You didn't have to turn around on a single spot like you're a frickin' tank. It worked. Why change that? Does that enhance the survival horror experience? You know, I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I'm pretty sure it just irritates the player and gets you killed in battle. You know, they changed the combat system too, and I would be willing to say that in some ways the new combat system, which isn't that different from the first one, is better. But I can't say that because the controls are far more difficult to deal with. The original combat system had a bar that you had to wait for in order to attack, kind of like in Final Fantasy games or a lot of turn-based RPGs. Here, they basically just remove the bar and let you target enemies in a more free-based style, which does work a lot better for a survival horror game, in my honest opinion. While I do love the first Parasite Eve's combat system, it's far easier on the player in this game, but the controls completely ruin it, because it's way more difficult to maneuver. You can still avoid attacks and stuff, but it's way more difficult because the controls are so fucking abysmal. You can move around freely in the first Parasite Eve, no problem, and actually dodge attacks through your own skill. Here you're constantly hindered by the damn controls. What the hell? Why would you change this? You had controls that worked fine, and you, what, ripped off Resident Evil because you think those controls were better? How is this better? How is this better? Tell me now, because I still, to this day, have no idea how this is supposed to impress me or make this game any better than the first, because believe me, it makes it infinitely worse. You have to hit the X button to walk up and down stairs. What the fuck? I would like to know why. Right now. What is the possible purpose in that? To make it, you know, so you don't walk downstairs by accident because the controls don't suck? You know, if you had left the controls the way they were, this wouldn't even be necessary to begin with! There is a lot to like here, in all honesty. You can customize your weapons. You can equip things way more easily. There's actually a more competent item list in this game that makes it more easy to find things and use weapons. There's a wide variety of different accessories and weapons to choose from. There's way more variety in the combat, and all of that's completely pointless because it's impossible to control your character with any level of competence because the controls suck big fat monkey balls. Yes, that's right. The controls completely ruin this experience, even if you could get past the plot, because they suck that hard. I just don't get why they felt the need to rip off their Resident Evil's gameplay style. No one played Resident Evil for the gameplay, or certainly not the controls. Like I said, they always sucked. They played it because of the survival horror aspects. Parasite Eve 2 doesn't really have much of that. There's no real surviving, and there's very little horror, and all you have left with is a combat system that's constantly, and I repeat, constantly hindered by the broken, stupid, pointless, restrictive controls. And why does this boss have a flamethrower in his mouth? Why did Neo-Ark make him? What was the purpose behind this? How is he supposed to be superior? How does he refuel the flamethrower? How does he eat? Seriously, I'm sorry. I know I went back to that, but I just can't get over some of these monster designs. They're creative in some regards, I guess, and they're sort of disturbing on some levels, but man, they are such a drop in quality compared to the disturbing monsters you'd fight in the first game. There's just everything. It's just not as good. At the end of the day, it's not as good as the first game. And before I forget, I will talk about the sound. Yes, the sound. The music in this game is, surprise, surprise, not as good as the first game. The intro theme is just a remix of the intro theme from the first game, which was good in fairness, but the actual in-game music is somewhat forgettable, not as interesting as the first games, and loses all artistic merits. Remember that awesome piano theme from the first game that made the game artistic, interesting, deep, and memorable? Nothing like that ever happens or appears in this game. Yes, that's right. This game has lost all artistic merits and fails as a survival horror game because of its crippling, horrendous controls, as well as a plot that made little to no sense, monster designs that failed to intimidate, and honestly, just a poor experience overall. I wish I could recommend this game. If you're interested in it, I will just warn you that if you're interested in this game because you liked the first one, prepare to be disappointed. This isn't a Parasite Eve game. It's just another Resident Evil ripoff that you may enjoy, because, like I said, I guess at the end of the day, it's not necessarily a bad game. But it's got so many issues, it's not nearly as good as Resident Evil or the original Parasite Eve, and the plot isn't that captivating. If you really want to experience it, give it a try. I will say you should give it a chance, because there are people who do like it, but I honestly just can't stand it. I kind of wish they just let the series die, but then they made the third birthday after this one because, we had to keep the series going for some twisted-ass reason. I haven't played this game because Parasite Eve 2 pissed me off that much. This is Darkness, and I bid you all a fond farewell.